What's up YouTube, Capital G here, talking about the Link Vrains pack in this video, and gonna be talking about some of the archetypes that have yet to be revealed when it comes to the Link monsters, doing a little bit of speculating and predicting as to what some of those effects might be, what the Link rating of those monsters might be, and whether or not those archetypes actually need and deserve Link monsters. I feel like it's a good time to do this video because when I talked about the Metaphors Link monster yesterday, some people had no idea about this leak list. Some people didn't know where it came from, if I was making this up. And I guess just to give you a real quick recap, this was posted on Reddit some time ago. It's been taken down now, not exactly sure why, but these were supposed to be the 20 archetypes that were confirmed, or not confirmed because it's a leak, but the 20 archetypes that were getting Link monsters in this pack. Now you guys know when it comes to Yu-Gi-Oh! Leak, you generally need to have some sort of like visual evidence to back up your claims. It's really easy to believe if somebody's like, oh yeah, in the next set, you know, this card's going to be this rarity, etc., etc. If you have a whole bunch of pictures and you post them on Facebook, because we see that all the time. But it's another thing if you're like, yo Cap G, I heard from my cousin who works at Konami that Fire Kings and Fire Fists are both going to get a broken new Link monster in Flames of Vengeance. Obviously Flames of Vengeance is the set that comes after Extreme Force, and I would just be like, okay, I guess. I don't know if I can really believe this, but as I said in yesterday's video, guys, I think at this point, with 9 out of the 20 cards being revealed and confirmed, and them all being on this leak list, I think it's like, I feel comfortable believing this list. So I want to just talk about some of these archetypes. It's really weird. Every single archetype so far, except Lightsworn, is getting a Link 2 monster, but there are 2 archetypes in specific on this list that I actually think might get Link 1s, and those are Invoked and Prophecy. So the reason that I think Prophecy and Invoked might get Link 1s is because when you think of both of these archetypes, you generally think of one monster hitting the board as the normal summon turn 1 always. You think of Blue Boy and Alistar, and I also think that Invoked's big problem can kind of be solved with a Link 1. If you make a Link 2 for Invoked, then you probably are going to require them to give up their fusion monster at the same time, so it might not be the easiest thing for them to do turn 1, and I think that most of these archetypes want to get their monster on the board turn 1 so that they can expand the field. But if you do just give them a Link 1 monster, they can normal summon Alistar, they can get their invocation, they can go into this Link monster, and then they can still fusion summon using Alistar in the graveyard, so they don't have to they don't have to change their natural playstyle at all. And if you look at Prophecy historically has never spammed monsters. Even if you go back to the Spell Book of Judgment at 3 days, it was pretty much just jogging, sitting on the field, chilling, locking out the Dragon Rulers, and locking out special summons being powered up by Star Hall, and then Blue Boy just hitting the field every turn, just kind of searching the, you know, the copies of Fate and searching a billion cards from Judgment. It wasn't like they were really having like 4 monsters on the field. Maybe you might have had a Kaiku or something like that, but the point that I'm getting at is this is not a deck that naturally puts like 3-4 monsters on the field. I don't even think Prophecy really puts more than 1 or 2 monsters on the field. So I think that Link 1s would actually work pretty nice, and Prophecy don't really use the extra deck at all. So, you know, Prophecy doesn't need like 2 extra zones, they don't need 2 zones to be open. Now, one monster that I actually think is really kind of just up in the air as to what it's going to do, how it's going to really work, is the Ritual Beast monster. The Ritual Beast Link monster, I kind of feel like that can just go any way. If you look at the Ritual Beast fusions, like all 4 of the contact fusions, they do completely different things. Like, I honestly think that Petalfin and Ulti-Gaia Pelio, like those 2 want to stay on the board. They don't really want to tag out because obviously Pink Dolphin has the really big booty and it's immune to like Regeki and Slumber and whatnot, and then the Ulti-Gaia Pelio can just, you know, it can negate stuff like Herald of Perfection. But when you look at Kanahawk and the Ulta Pelio, like Ulti Pelio is really just a battering ram, and then like Ulti Kanahawk never wants to stay on the board. That thing just jumps in and out of battle every 2 seconds, and it just kind of wants to, you know, cipher through a whole bunch of cards and add them to your hand so that you can get an overwhelming advantage and use those cards to just kind of wreck your opponent. So I feel like Konami, this card could literally do anything. I do think that Ritual Beasts are going to get a Link 2 because contact fusion with all their monsters are 2, so, you know, requires 2 monsters. So I think that 2 just makes a lot of sense for contact decks. We also saw that with Gladiator Beast. I think Evil Swarm is probably going to have a floodgate effect. I know people don't like that because people have nightmares still to this day about, you know, Evil Swarm Ophion and making decks like Heretics and other, you know, really powerful decks with a whole bunch of high-level monsters. Shout outs to Jack Knights. Get Ophion on the field, you can't play Yu-Gi-Oh! Making those cards completely irrelevant and unable to hit the board. So I kind of think, what does Ophion not cover? I kind of think that they might make this card just a piece that can support Ophion. Maybe you get this, and then Konami wants you to bring back your Evil Swarm cards through Soul Charge or through some other type of way, and keep those cards on the board at the same time and just lock out more of your opponent's options. So maybe this one's going to cover monster effects. Maybe while you control another Evil Swarm monster, your opponent won't be able to activate monster effects or something like that. But I think that this is going to have kind of a floodgate effect, because yes, there are other Evil Swarm monsters, Ixies like Ouroboros and Bahamut, that don't have floodgate effects, but Konami has to recognize that clearly the most consistent and strongest and most played competitively Evil Swarm Ixie monster has been Ophion. Ophion has been basically the win condition of that deck. Now this one kind of frustrates me, Noble Knights at number 9. Noble Knights frustrates me because I don't think that there is any saving this deck. Noble Knights just got a new piece of legacy support. I can't remember if it was an Extreme Force, Circuit Break, or Code of the Duelist, but it didn't really do anything for the deck. It's not going to do anything for the deck. Doesn't really change the deck's tier or anything like that. And I think that most Noble Knights in their, like, if you get them in a second of honesty, they probably don't want a new extra deck card. They just want ways to make their deck faster and more consistent instead of an extra deck card that I guess they'll go into, but it's going to have to be just ridiculous. It's going to have to be a fucking behemoth for it to really improve the deck, because Noble Knight players aren't losing because they can't get, you know, both the Synchro and the Exia on the field at the same time. They're losing because, you know, your opponent has random Mirror Force that, like, gets rid of all your cards and you end up losing to do it. Of course, I mean, like, Quaking and, you know, shit like Storming, or I guess you could put, you know, Monarch Stormforth and just a whole bunch of other cards that beat the Noble Knight deck. So I feel like unless this card's going to be incredible, unless you link summon it and it gets like 4 Noble Arms cards like straight to your back row, Noble Knights they're damn near unfixable. I think the Shadow one, this is probably going a little too far, but I think that it's going to be Konami's way of giving us a Construct replacement. Konami seems to have no interest in bringing Construct into the game, despite the fact that there are way more broken things, and even Construct at 3, I don't really think would make Shadows like the best deck. Even if Construct was at 3 right now, I don't think they'd be a top 4 deck, to be honest. Like, I just think that they've kind of been power creeped, but I expect for this to kind of be Konami's way of making amends. Don't be surprised if it's even called Construct and looks just like Construct. I think that it'll be a Link 2, because Shadows are another deck that they don't really summon that many, like, main deck Shadow monsters to the field. You know, they have Falco and stuff like that, but they don't really summon that many of them to the field. So I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think it's going to have that same effect. All right, I think it might have Construct's effect, and it might do something even more powerful than that. I expect it to be extremely powerful because it is trying to replace a banned card. When it comes to Mermail, this is the card that I think is going to be most difficult to fuck up. I say that because Mermail, much like some of these other decks like Prophecy, don't really use their extra deck, and Mermail already have all the offensive explosiveness that they can need. Plus, they do have stuff like Mistar Boys, which is basically what I kind of expect it to be. I expect it to be something like Mistar Boy. If I was gonna guess an effect, or at least some type of interaction, I fully expect it to have a foolish burial type effect. Something that lets you drop dragoons into the graveyard, or something that lets you like throw a marksman into the graveyard, or some way of being able to activate your Atlanteans or your Mermail monsters immediately. I expect it to kind of be a way of helping Mermail players out when they don't open with your Nephthybis play, which obviously Mermail definitely want to open with. When I look at Zephyra, I think this is super well deserved. You guys know I showed off like Zephyra Infernity and a bunch of other really great Zephyra decks, but I said that Zephyra was basically on borrowed time because, you know, the pendulum mechanic was going to get huge nerfs, and it basically happened. Zephyra just came out at a really bad time for, you know, cards to come out and pendulum cards to come out, Maximum Crisis, where you kind of had like what, 2 months or something like that, maybe even less, to actually play your deck at full power. So I do kind of expect the Zephyr card. I don't know if it's gonna require, are all Zephyr monsters pendulums? I feel like they are, but I don't want to say that because I feel like there could be another one that, what's it called? I hope it's not generic, because I feel like this Zephyr card is going to be very powerful, and I think it's going to search, because Zephyr do a lot of searching in that damn deck. There's 2 things Zephyr seem to have a lot of: counter traps and search ability. So I fully expect it to have some type of search effect. Then when it comes to the Gem Knight Link monster, I expect very, very high things for this card. I really think that it needs to be one of the strongest Link monsters in this entire pack. I say that because Gem Knights are in such a terrible position right now, and Konami has to know that the fusion monsters that we currently have as Gem Knights, only Lady Brilliant Diamond and Master Diamond are pretty much up to the power creep curve. I know a lot of people are going to be like, what about Seraphonite? She's OP, that's why people play Brilliant Fusion. Gem Knights do not summon that card. You only see that card summoned when people splash Brilliant Fusion and Garnet in the decks. Gem Knight players do not actually use it, so I'm hoping that it'll have something maybe like a discard cost. That way you can constantly use your Brilliant, or excuse me, your Gem Knight Fusion. You can constantly pitch it. It needs to not be once per turn either. Like, Gem Knights need to be able to OTK. It needs to be something like discard a Gem Knight card from your hand and you know, spin a card back to your opponent's deck, like non-targeting, and then something like banish a Gem Knight card from your deck to like draw a card. It needs to be something like ridiculous to put the deck back on the map, because, you know, kind of most of the fusion monsters kind of suck dick in Gem Knights, and I don't know, man, the deck is just, it doesn't really work right now. When it comes to Medoche, I think this is just I don't know what to expect, to be honest. Like, I guess if I had to give a prediction, it's probably going to be non-targeting removal, because that's what Tiramisu does. But Gem Knights also have other like Xyz that aren't like remotely like that. So when it comes to Medoche, like, I have no idea. And then I guess lastly is Insector. If I had to guess what Insector, I'm gonna say that Konami realizes that the two Xyz monsters that Konami gave Insectors during Zexal were pretty much inconsequential. No one really summoned them ever. I think that one of the rank 6 actually did more work in Heretics than it ever did in Insectors. That's the like epitome of irony. Insectors don't even really use their Xyz monsters, so I think Konami will try and make up for that. I'm gonna guess that it's going to be a pop effect, but it's going to be something you can do during your opponent's turn. I think it's going to be something like Hornet. They realize Hornet is like one of the strongest cards. I think it'll have something to do with attack gaining, or like some type of attack modification, because if you look at all the equips, they all gain like 500 attack, and then Gigamantis turns your monster's original attack into 2500. So I think it'll be something like that. In fact, it wouldn't even surprise me if it could equip itself to an Insector monster. That would be kind of crazy, but I could see that. I think that it's just going to be, though, more focused around blowing up shit on your opponent's turn, and or excuse me, blowing up shit on your opponent's side of the field. But I think it will be during both players' turns to, you know, adjust the power creep and whatnot. Anyways, whatever you guys think, leave it in the comment section below. Also, what monster are you looking most forward to as or excuse me, when it comes to the archetypes that have not been revealed? I'm gonna go with Gem Knights, and if this thing sucks, I'm gonna be so fucking mad. I'm a fusion player at heart. Right now, we don't have a lot of fusion decks in the meta. So again, whatever you guys think, leave it in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching. As always, subscribe if you have not already, and turn on those notifications for daily videos.